So this is our second consultation on the cocoa rehabilitation program, which is a minute part of our mega project, which is trying to develop a mega farming development program for the island of Tobago. At our first consultation, we basically engage in a fact-finding process, basically. And now at this second stakeholder consultation, we would go further into that, for which Mr. James would expound on. In addition to that, just let me give you a brief overview of the mega farming program, for which it is an initiative that was born out of the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development. This mega farming project is one of our major line items for which we want to get started or jumpstart this fiscal, for which we know we may not be able to accomplish all listed objectives, but basically we are doing a step-by-step approach, for which we have started with the first consultation, now the second consultation, and perhaps a third consultation maybe within the next 2 to 3 months, for which we would use the information gleaned to make informed decisions on how we would proceed in relation to the cocoa rehabilitation process. Now, like I said before, the cocoa rehabilitation process is only one out of many of the objectives that we have to accomplish within that mega farming system that we are developing, for which we also have developed and still working on that definition of what is mega farming in the Tobago context. And if you do your research, most times you would find the definition of mega farms and not necessarily the definition of mega farming. The reason why we came up with mega farming opposed to mega farm is because of the landscape of Tobago. We know we only have approximately 113 square miles, of which perhaps 2/3 is the main forest reserve, which is protected by law. So in that context, we decided that even if there are farmers on the eastern end of the island who may be involved in a certain type of crop production, and there are farmers also on the western end of the island, as long as they are more or less operating within the same parameters in terms of the objectives of what we are looking at, we classify all of them collectively as farmers trying to achieve that goal of mega farming when you put together all the different moving parts regardless of their location. Right? So that is more or less the objective of the mega farming committee. We are also looking at other elements in terms of the financials, the environmental impact, and also trying to merge this program along with other programs that were created under the division. For example, we have TARI, which is the Tobago Agriculture Research Institute, and then we also have TAGS, which is the Tobago Agri-Technology Services Limited, for which one would focus on research and development, the other would focus on introducing technology within the agriculture space, also including youth and women in agriculture. And you know, tomorrow we actually celebrate International Women's Day, for which I'm not too sure if you all saw on the media, the department, or the division rather, is actually recognizing women in agriculture in a grand way within the different departments in our division, from incentives to agro incentives, in agriculture itself, etc. So without further ado, I would now introduce Mr. James Trotman, who is the chairman of the Coordinating Executive Committee for the Mega Farming Program, and he would go further in detail in relation to today's proceeding for the second consultation. All right, so please welcome Mr. James Trotman.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kerr, for that introduction. Let me also jump on the point of recognizing all women in agriculture and for that role you all would have played and will play to continue agriculture and the sustainability within the various sectors of agriculture. Right? I would just, let me see if I could twist this a little bit. Right? So I would want to just jump right into the presentation, given that time is of interest, right? And we would have lost some time already this morning. So humble apologies, as we needed to secure a projector. Things didn't work out in our favor in the earlier time of the day. Right, so let me just jump right in. Right? Technical glitch already. Just a sec. Right. So Mr. Kerr would have touched on the committee objectives, right? So we have a little note there which states that the Mega Farming Development Program Committee is a 9-member team that was installed by the Secretary with responsibility for the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development. And our aim is to implement farm development projects that are designed to produce food on a grand scale. And we know that we have livestock and crops, cocoa as the case may be. And in this regard, where we talk about producing on a grand scale, we want to produce cocoa on a grand scale. Obviously, we start with the consultations, and then we would move further into looking at strategies and partnership and so on as we improve or revitalize the sector. Right? We also aim to collaborate with key partners to capitalize on Tobago's agricultural potential. And we know that Tobago has good agricultural potential. And in the area of cocoa, there are a number of agencies that we can collaborate with. And I would make mention of 2 of them today. And we will continue to build on the idea and the program of revitalizing cocoa. Embrace novel technologies. And in these future times, obviously we have challenges. And to deal with some of those challenges, we have to incorporate some technologies as we treat with pests and training and all these kind of things. And we also want to engage in sustainable projects coupled with mitigation of negative environmental impact. Obviously, I do not know about cocoa having any negative impact on the environment, right? And I do know that cocoa is a sustainable product. I actually born and reared cocoa on my family land, and I may leave cocoa on the land as well, right? So I know cocoa is here to stay, and it is quite sustainable. So it makes sense that we engage in these kind of conversation and seek to revitalize the sector. As it relates to the committee, right, I am James Strutman, one of the 9 members. I have Mr. Kidel Kerr today, Ms. Kadisha Baird, who is our secretary, Dr. Paul Crooks, who was the moderator in our first consultation. Unfortunately, he's not here today due to another exercise. We have Mr. Potter Bruno, who a lot of people would know in the agricultural sector. Similarly, Mr. Orwin Dillon, and also Mr. Marcus Maiku. We have Joseph Charles and Dion Brebner. Right? Quite an exceptional bunch as we seek to work on the sector itself, the agricultural sector. Right. Supporting all of the initiatives really, the Secretary for Agriculture, and we know that the Secretary is quite innovative, and she does not really turn down any kind of initiative. She will try her best to ensure that the agricultural sector receive the kind of support that it needs in order to grow. Right? And we also have the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, which is TADCO, which is that marketing arm within the division. So with all that introduction, let me really go into why we are here today and to discuss some objectives and so on. So the first consultation, as Mr. Kerr said, dealt with really facts finding, and a number of issues were identified, to which I would point on the next chart, and some of the strategies we want to use to overcome some of those challenges. Today's consultation, which is the second one, we also want to look at the developing strategies for the rehabilitation of cocoa, and also identify private sector partnership to assist in the development of cocoa. Now, strategies are mentioned, partnership are also mentioned, as we will see in the lower slides. All right, so first consultation, key issues for some of us who were not present at the first consultation in Bell Garden Community Center. So we have them highlighted as pest control measures, disease management support, need for training, access for primary processing, access to market, availability of planting material. And those headings there kind of capture many of the issues within the sector. So one of the major pests that we have in the sector is that of parrots, right? And obviously we have to find a way to treat with that. We also have diseases, right? And lack of training. And to treat with all of that, let me just move to the next slide, right? To treat with some of those issues, let me start with the pest control measures. The THA, you all can see at that distance, because I realize it just sort of fade out on me there, right? Right, so the THA will seek to investigate the declassification of the protection on parrots. Obviously, we know that this thing is enshrined in law, right? During the open season, one can go game hunting, but during the closed season, they are protected, right? And to start with that whole conversation, then it involves a number of individuals and agencies at the higher level of government, right? But nonetheless, the THA and the division will continue that conversation, right? Nonetheless, we have to employ certain strategies to deal with parrots, and we are saying that we can have bird boxes, we can use kites, introduction of birds of prey, squawker, and blank shots, right? The other one is quite faded. Now, what I know is that on the list here, the squawker seemed to be quite effective They have tested it in Trinidad, and they have seen an increase in production, in the cocoa production in Trinidad. And in Tobago, right, they have also installed one at Goldsboro, right, under the Department of Forestry, CARDI, and I think is RBC. Yeah, it's another agency, right? But nonetheless, the item there is installed and it is working quite effectively. As a matter of fact, they would actually have a launch next week, Tuesday, at the Goodwood High School between the hours of 3:30 and 4 o'clock. Right? The results so far are quite good using this scorecard at Goldsboro. Right? We want to look at online training for the identification and management of diseases. And as we said, training is one of the issues that were mentioned. And given that we are all busy people, then we have to embrace the technology, right? And to offer this type of training, then we have to engage some institution or an institution in order to do so, right? This will be made mention of a little later. All right, to another opportunity, we have provide cocoa estate management training, including online training manual. Similarly, for that kind of management training, we can do it online as well. Develop central location, primary processing capacity for fermenting and drying. While I was growing up, I know that my parents used to have their own fermenting and drying within their space. But in the event that that cannot be done, then we have to look for a centralized location to do so, right? So that at the end of the day, one can still have their beans taken to a particular place and have it processed and so on. So this too is an option if a space is not within your confines of your property, right? Promotion of Tobago cocoa product to aid access to market. As I know, Tobago has one of the best cocoa product, and marketing that product or adding to the market of the product will certainly yield benefits for all of us. And most definitely we need third-party engagement in order to do so. Availability of planting material. The Cocoa Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago, as I know, also provide planting material. And I think also, I think planting material is also provided in Tobago as well as it relates to that, right? So we are no short on planting material, right? Right, so potential for partnership. As I said, that no one entity can do it alone, right? I know that individuals would have been trying. It requires a lot of funding against each individual to upgrade their farms and to bring cocoa to, or to bring their product to a level that would be acceptable within the local market and also the international market. And therefore, we cannot do it alone. We have to work together. And the THA and the division is quite committed to working with such company like the Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa Association Limited. We also want to work with the Cocoa Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago and all other agencies that would come on board. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is to win. That is as simple as I can say it. We want to win. We want each and every cocoa producer to benefit from this initiative, right? I also have within the mix, let me not forget, Mr. Parasram, who is a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa Association. We have started communicating already, right? And most definitely I would ask him to come and just share a few words as he would best able to explain, right? What are some of the initiatives that they have working along with the THA so that all of us could benefit as we seek to revitalize the sector. Right? We also have a planned approach. As you know, we are in the second quarter, and in this quarter, what we want to provide is estate management training with supporting training manuals in regards to fermenting and drying and develop Tobago cocoa brand. Right? This period within the second quarter would probably run us to probably about June, so we are still in good timing. And in the fourth quarter, which is August, July, August, September. Right, July, August, September. Right, the fourth quarter, we want to engage in pest control management program to identify opportunities to identify access to market, including training and chocolate making. Right, so we do have, you know, some time to plan that out as well. And in the first quarter of 2025, and that is because we do not intend to just have the consultation and stop, right? It is an ongoing process. This is something that will grow over time. We have lagged a lot in the sector, right? Again, not by any fault of any cocoa enthusiasts, but because we did not have that collaboration. And we need to have the collaboration. So in the first quarter of 2025, we want to develop that agrotourism product and or opportunities, right? So you see, we are not just looking at just picking the cocoa, fermenting, you know, bean to bark, chocolate making kind of thing. We want to have it as an agrotourism product. Right? Right. And I know that the question will be asked, and how will one identity and brand be maintained? Now, the division and the THA will be quite protective of each and every individual brand and identity, because we know that as an individual within the sector, you would want to be recognized in your space. Notwithstanding, we are looking for a Tobago brand as well, right? And with all of these conversations that will take place, it will involve the legal department of the THA playing its role, drafting the necessary document so that each and every entity maintain their trueness to the contract agreement, right? So do not be afraid that your identity and brand will be lost. We would want to protect that for you, right? Again, all in the interest of time, we want to allow for questions as well, as we continue to take your questions and continue to build on our documentation, right? I will now let me allow Mr. Parasram to just come up and say a few words, as the THA would have already started discussions with him, right? So that he could better explain where we are going with the revitalization of cocoa. All right, thank you.
Is this on? Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Trotman, and good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Parasram. I work for the Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa Company. It's an entity which is a public-private partnership. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Agriculture and the University of the West Indies Cocoa Research Center. Most of what we do is cocoa processing, but in Trinidad. And we also have extensive chocolate making equipment, and we supply to a number of companies in Trinidad chocolate products. We also export. But one of the discussions that we have led to this discussion with the THA is that I live in Tobago, I live in Alfred Crescent in Bon Accord, and for me, I have a personal interest in looking at what we can do in Tobago. It is known that recently in Trinidad, bean supply has dropped for a number of reasons, and this is something that is still very low. And so in discussions with a few of the estates here and the cocoa growers in Tobago, there's an opportunity to work with the THA and in partnership with the Cocoa Development Company. We've conducted a number of visits to see how it would work, and essentially our main focus is on the training we can provide with the Cocoa Development Company to all the cocoa growers. So what I've offered our expertise is working on the training and the processing and the marketing. And these are skills that we want to bring with the hope that all of you can engage, participate in the training, whether that's in growing or fermenting, drying or processing. And the idea is that this is an ongoing process where we can also provide some of our expertise in regards to supporting Tobago. I've been living here for 12 years. It's something that is of a personal interest to me, but essentially I think there's a huge potential, not just on the cocoa, but the agro-tourism. And that's something that we can offer far better than Trinidad can. I believe it's something that we have from all the stakeholders we've engaged with. There's a lot of excitement to do this project. And the most important thing, I know you've addressed, Mr. Trotman, the parrots, but for us it's quality and yield. Though anything that brings us quality and yield will give us into the right tracks. So this is something that we would like to present, and I know that the Cocoa Development Company is 110% behind this process. So I just want to leave it there, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Parasram. Right. So let me just turn you back over to the moderator and Mr. Kidelker, and we will just continue. Right?
All right, so let's thank Mr. Trotman for his presentation. Round of applause, please. Right, so now we will move on to the question and answer segment based on his short presentation. Now, this presentation is much shorter than what we presented at the first consultation. And that is a bit obvious because a lot of the questions were posed at the first consultation, for which we documented as part of our report. And now we brought the second part. All right, so some of these questions were raised in relation to the pest control, and he gave you an update as it relates to what the THA has done on its side with the squawker. And they have troubleshooted it, as he mentioned, and thus far it is doing a great job. But as environmentalists and environmental enthusiasts, we know that animals tend to adapt and adopt. All right, so we know over time the species may adapt to the different songs that these squawkers may produce, but we still have to explore other alternatives. We have calling, we also have in terms of the blank shots, and I think, excuse me, what's your name again? Cyrus, Mr. Cyrus, you made mention of exploring the different options at your estate, for which these animals, they just adopt to whatever you have implemented, but you have never tried the squawker before?
Police cars, the old type, I had that, and they got a new to them.
Right. So with the Squawker now, they have built in a software system with different sounds, right? So they have different sounds of distress.
So my information is that the Squawker has over 100 songs, and that is to ensure that that is to ensure right. So basically, the Squawker is a device that is used to emit songs. It is really something like a horn, and it is attached to a device that has different songs in it, connected to a battery, right? That gives it its power to function. It also has a timer to it. So the Squawker at Goldsboro comes on at 6 a.m. in the morning. It comes on every 4 minutes thereafter and cuts off at 5:30 p.m. So the night is quiet, right? So that is the technology there. It has, as I said, over 100 songs, so it is quite difficult for the birds to get comfortable with the different songs. So that is how we intend to treat with the parrots, right? To confuse them along the way.
Does it have a power source or
well, at this point in time, it is connected to a battery, but obviously having some sort of solar type system would be quite necessary.
All right, so Mr. James just explained the entire structure and the mechanics of the sounder. Now, this is similar to what they use at the airport, because, you know, within the radius of that airport, or all airports around the world, you're not supposed to have birds. So they tend to utilize that Squawker, that device that has different sounds of distress, whether it be from falcons, black hawk, chicken hawk, as the case may be, to deter them from that specific area. I know some of you may ask the cost of it. I did my own research from that said company that the government received I think it's 2 Squawkers from, and the average cost of it would be around 40 to 50,000 TT dollars. Yeah, it is expensive. It has the capability of utilizing solar power as well. So you don't necessarily need to attach the 12-volt car battery is what it uses, right? So you can utilize the option of the solar, and you can move it to different locations, or you could use those audio wires to extend the same horns that you utilize, or similar horns. You can extend it at a further reach at different locations within your estate. So that is probably one of the last options that you can utilize to deter that pest. And I'm not too sure if you have the Rufous Vintage Chakalaka issue as well, in terms of the coquelicot okay. All right. But in relation to the same pest control measures, any of the farmers here, do you all have any other pest control issue on your holdings? No? Well, I guess the parrot is the main pest. All right, good. All right. So in terms of number 2, as it relates to disease management and support, Do you all have any questions pertaining to the disease aspect within the industry in Tobago? So there's no disease. All right. As it relates to number 3, the need for training. I think that is very important. Seeing that we are looking not only at the local market or the domestic market, but an international market for which we would have to meet certain minimum requirements, and not just minimum requirements as it relates to the end product, whether it be the chocolate bar, whether it be other types of value-added commodity. But most times when you're looking at an international market, they tend to look at your best practices on the farm, right? So I think that in relation to training would be something that the division would have to embark on definitely to ensure that farmers are adopting the best international practices. So even if we have agencies from the UN to send some of their technocrats or some of their officers to do any sort of site visit, unknowing to us, to ensure that whatever we want to export, we are engaged in best practices, we must be able to show on every farm that signs on to our program that they are indeed practicing the best that there is out there in terms of our agro production, from primary production all the way to the value-added commodity. And just permit me to add to that in relation to those both sections. I know in Tobago, especially for farmers and agro-processors, they tend not to follow brand and identity guidelines. All right, because there are certain minimum requirements for packaging. All right, and not only within the cocoa industry, but all industries within the country. Even the simple benebol, the korma, and all these things as it relates to the packaging, we tend not to meet minimum standards, be it barcoding, be it having it, the nutrition facts being identified. We tend not to meet those minimum requirements, and I think the training component is very, very, very crucial. All right. In terms of the access to markets, marketing is very expensive. All right, and it is not just on a local scale that we want to market the commodity, but we want to move on to Trinidad and regional and international. And we all know once it has made in Tobago or a product of Tobago, we know how that could go in terms of that brand and the quality that we produce. But we also have the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company that could assist us and being a partner with us to help finding those markets for the farmers. All right, so we don't want a case where farmers and persons within the program continue to complain about they are producing, but they can't get it off their hands. We tend to get that a lot within other aspects of agriculture. So they are farming, they have the produce, but they don't know how to get it off their hands. And that is where the market and marketing comes in. So although we have multiple means and methods and options to market the commodity out there, it is very difficult for a farmer to farm, to harvest its produce, and even trying to go into agro-processing at the same time and trying to market it at the same time. It is very difficult, it is challenging. And we are basically trying now, as part of the training program component, to include that logistics and supply chain management aspect. Because we don't want a case where we are able perhaps to produce a certain volume this month, but next 2 months we can't produce any at all. And if we understand economics clearly, where supply and demand meet, we try to get that equilibrium. But we don't want a case where the supply cannot meet the demand, and also we need to look at quality if we are to get that stamp called Tobago on it. All right. As it relates to the availability of planting material, I know we are actually working on that as it relates to composting, etc. And I don't know if Mr. Dillon would be able to expound a bit on our planting material availability within the industry. Just an overview as it relates to that.
Generally, most of the farmers collect plants from Trinidad. I know previously Louisville would have done a certain amount of plants, but we going back into this industry, I think they're going to ramp up some of the production in Tobago. And we should be able to access planting material from Trinidad as well, from the region.
Okay, so are you telling farmers that currently the material is not available in Tobago?
I'm not saying it's not available. For a while, a lot of farmers was not into production, a lot of farmers wasn't buying planting material, but now that this project is about to initiate, I believe the need is there for us to ramp up the production. And a lot of the farmers who are already into cocoa, what they'll be doing actually is rehabilitation. They'll be just pulling the trees to get going again.
Okay, good. That's perfect. Right, so no problem.
In terms of the planting material, we did have a meeting with the cocoa development company here, and they offered to come and provide support on developing a nursery, but sourcing from here. So that we weren't going to bring any plants or planting material from Trinidad. It was all going to be identifying key estates. These are estates that the CDC already knows here and already have a training relationship with here. And what we would look at doing is developing that from effectively scratch. So it's a program that is incorporated, and I hope will also be incorporated in the training element.
Certainly. So in relation to the partnership, that is where that comes in, all right, where we have all stakeholders on board, where we have our main partners on board, where we identify what organization is responsible for what, and maybe roll out that training program, all right? But we could make that available to the farmers as we further develop that program, all right? Within the Tobago space, there are several organizations within the industry. Do we have anyone representing the cocoa? I'm not familiar with the name. We don't have anyone here representing that organization here? No? Yes, because I'm thinking that in relation to empowering persons, I think it is best to do it in a collective format, opposed to trying to reach out to everyone individually. It is very difficult at times. So even if you all can become part of the association or create your own association, and the reason why I'm saying this is because there is a bigger picture to this. And I know some persons may want to ask the question about funding, about grant funding, right? And monetary assistance, for which there is. Because one I can mention now, and you all could access the forms at the division's office, ground floor. You could just ask the security for it. It's the agro incentive grant that is available, right? To all farmers. All you need is the farmer's badge. You must be a registered farmer. You also must sign up the form, of course. You must show ownership of the land, or you've been granted permission to operate on the parcel of land. So I know Tobago, we have a land tenure issue, all right, whereby persons may not be able to show ownership, but you could show that you are given permission, all right, and then also just the business plan. So this is also for the agro-processors who want to get into that industry. The value of it is 100,000 TT dollars, right, and it is available for all farmers, fishermen, and agro-processors within the country with those minimum requirements. So I'm just throwing that out there for you all to explore as an option. Okay, so I think I touched on all the different aspects that Mr. James presented on. So I'm just opening the floor for any questions. Okay.
I have a question pertaining to the partnership training. Do you have a standard or bureau system set up in Tobago as pertaining to certain qualities or standards you need as far as relation internationally? Secondly, a Food and Drug Administration where someone can come and check the kind of products you have to relate to international standards again. Do we have that set up in Tobago?
If we have it set up in Tobago currently, no.
Yeah. Rather than doing the Trinidad.
The question to that is no. However, we do have intentions, again, of partnering with these agencies to ensure that the quality is being met and that we are not offering substandard quality within the market, both locally, regionally, and internationally, if I may say. So you have actually made a great suggestion because it is currently not in Tobago. We don't have inspectors based in Tobago. But I certainly would admit that it is up for consideration so that we can have that built into our training program that would be rolled out in the near future. Thank you. Yeah. Do we have any other question?
So I just want to make a statement in that when we started this journey of consultations, we do not have in mind the number of consultations that would be required until we actually, to reach that plateau that we are looking for. And most definitely, it is clear to me that we will have to have a third one. We will have to come back to you again. And when we come back to you, is to say to you that we have an MOU with such and such, and give you example of what the training is on paper, and to say to you that the dotted line has been signed on and this is the way forward. In that regard, I would not be able to say that in about 2 to 3 months we can do that, because I know Mr. Kerr said that probably we will have to have a third consultation in about 2 to 3 months. What will happen after this consultation is that the reports will be sent to the secretary, identifying what the findings are as of today, and the recommendation going forward and the discussions that needs to take place. And as I would have said earlier, obviously the legal department of the THA will have to come into play as we are now going to speak to other agencies, right, to build out certain items that will work best for the revitalization of cocoa. And in that regard, again, I would like to just say to you that we will keep you informed regularly as to the next consultation, because there has to be another. All right? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. James, for that contribution.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
My name is Intingo Joe. I have a few questions. Some of them are more concerns than questions. Now, I like to say that Tobagonians, especially country Tobagonians, our inheritance is laying in dereliction in the rainforest, in countryside. there are hundreds, even thousands of acres of cocoa just lying untended in the rainforest. I could take you on a walk, a 10-hour walk, and we never leave cocoa. Just walk cocoa, just walk through cocoa, 10 hours. So the thing is, yes, I was late today, so I'm not sure what was said in terms of which plots of cocoa are earmarked for this development and how we intend to access the cocoa. Right? Or if you're expecting people to plant a backyard of cocoa, like, or like that. But apart from being in cocoa and agriculture, really and truly, the market that we are in is a real estate market. It's not so much a cocoa market, but a real estate market. Now, there was a time when we used to have to pay tax on the lands, and a lot of those lands, which were privately owned, they are owned by the predecessor of a lot of us. Our grandparents and great-grandparents owned those lands. And at one point in time when we were paying taxes, the lands were going into falter. And it was being auctioned off, and people were buying them up for small money. Right? There were a certain group of people that were hanging out in the in land management and the Board of Inland Revenue, like vultures, and buying up Tobago land. And Mr. Mitchell and his team put a stop to that. They put clauses in place to prevent Tobago lands from being sold out. Now, with this new land tax that is coming up, I'm hoping that those clauses aren't removed and allow cause Tobago lands or Tobagonians lands to go back into falters and go back on the auction block. Because a lot of Tobagonians going to lose their land. And these lands are cocoa lands. They are cultivated under cocoa. Right? So I don't know if anything is being done, any research, any update has been done with those clauses and things to ensure that the land stay. And prior to that, will the descendants of these people be given either assistance to administrate for those lands, get those lands back in the family name to know who belong to what and what belong to who, and do surveying and all of that to re-establish the bounds and these kind of things? Will any of that be done?
All right, so let me answer the question in relation to the property tax, right? Because I know the property tax, it is now law. It's not really just land tax, but it's a property tax, for which they have released on their website through, I think it's the Ministry of Finance, right, with all the different layers in relation to the value of the property. And then they also juxtapose that with the monthly rental fee and the annual fee in relation to the value of the property. Now, I can't go in depth in relation to how much would it cost in relation to these estates and if it is applicable to that also, or if it's been exempted. All right, but I know once there is like a building on it, for sure they would value it, they will look at the acreage and they would add a value to it. But in relation to the cocoa and other agricultural estates, I cannot answer that question, but of course it's something that we would document and we would ask our legal department to look into it in relation to land ownership versus the tax that it may incur. All right, so that is something we would answer hopefully at our next consultation, but it is something of paramount importance for sure. As you mentioned, the private cocoa estate, I know for sure in Charlottesville, because you know there's a massive cocoa estate in Charlottesville owned by Ms. Pat Turpin. What had happened is that, seeing that she is the proprietor.
What's the name?
Ms. Pat Turpin. Yeah, Pat Turpin. She owns probably about 70% of the lands in Charlottesville. All right? What had happened at that time, we were advising, and that is before this committee was formed. What we were advising is that we were advising that an NGO, right, from within close proximity or within that area, to have an agreement, that memorandum of agreement or understanding with the proprietor, with the owner of the estate, right, to have some sort of arrangement going on. But that is a private arrangement outside of the state, all right? In the state aspect, in relation to like as in goes bro, we can make that kind of arrangement with the partners we have. But as it relates to the private estates, we cannot tell them what to do. Even the THA doesn't have the power to compulsory acquire lands in Tobago. That is only under the remit of the central government to do those kind of, I wouldn't even say harsh, but like drastic and serious measures. They are the ones who have that sort of power to control. So the most we can do is offer or try to advocate and try to propose to them that these are the possibilities, these are the options for which we can go into this agreement, and we can offer you a certain amount of money or whatever it is to operate your estate. But you are just like, it's just like a leaser versus a leasee arrangement going on. But it's not like you would be the owner of it. They remain the owner, but you just go into agreement with them to operate it over a period of time, just like any other lease arrangement. But it's something that we would have to map out. We may have to develop like a general cadastral sheet, or maybe have Tobago identifying all these cocoa estates. And I know you mentioned that you could take a 10-hour walk. I know you may have been exaggerating, but you could take a 10-hour walk into the rainforest.
No exaggeration.
But what I would...
10 hours not enough. I'm telling you, 10 hours wouldn't be enough.
But what I would suggest is that, or what we would do rather, we would try through land management, because we can't do it at our committee stage. We would have a map, right, being developed, so we can specifically, from a bird's eye view, identify all these different estates. Because you might be suggesting that it is within the Main Ridge Reserve, right? But what we are working on, we need to know for sure how far in from the coastline, how far in from the estate into the Main Ridge. We need to get those facts. So you might be correct. I'm not saying that you are not correct, but we need to work based on the data available. All right? So what we would do, we would take your comment into consideration, which is valid, all right? But we would have it mapped out properly. We would make that request through land management to assist us, because it may take some time, and it would take some sort of LiDAR survey and all these different things to demarcate the different cocoa estates that we may have on the island.
Right. Now, even that lease arrangement is infinitely better than people not knowing, right? And should, when they start out, estates will be treated different from
private holdings,
private developed land, right? But in case, just to make sure that things doesn't go awry and people lose the land, and that lease thing, letting people know that we have there and this is what we're going to do with the land, and we're going to give you a little something. That's correct. Infinitely better than they not knowing, and should they go into fortress, they still don't know. And they lose the land and they don't even know. And 10, 15 years down the road, you see different development going on. Yeah?
Correct.
And the next thing again, I came late. I wasn't in the first consultation, and I came here late. So I'm not sure if I'm rehashing things that were discussed in the presentation. Well, I guess that you all would have done some market analysis. What is the estimated value of the cocoa industry in Tobago? The estimated overall value? Millions, billions, how much?
The estimated value of the
cocoa industry.
When you say the industry,
okay, that you all are aiming to capture, what is the estimated value? Like how much net the overall worth of the industry. That
Or what is the existing value of it, or what is the potential value of
the
it?
potential value that we are hoping to develop, to capture. How much million, how much billion?
Well, you're asking a very, 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 very tricky question. Because that question could be twofold. Because if we are looking at the industry as a whole, we need to do an assessment of it first to know the current state of it, right, of the estate. We also need to determine the potential yield.
Right.
And while we are determining the potential yield, we also need to take into consideration the main pests, right, that would downgrade or reduce what we may project. All right, so that equation would be a technical one. It is a technical answer. It is a good answer, a good question, sorry. But to answer that specifically, that is something that would take some time to generate as it relates to the actual value.
Right, and I like how you answer that because that leads nicely into the next question.
Good.
Right? So, the next question is, have you all identified the different layers of technocrats that need to be involved to fully realize the
Certainly.
industry? Because, and there are some people in here who feel how about it are just airing out certain things, right? It's no indictment on you all, right? In the past, right, talking to the older farmers who would have been in pig farming, planting, you name it, right? Even some of the fisher folk, there were initiatives by the THA to develop these different arms of the agricultural sector in today. And they start up, run a few years, and then fall off, especially when they were changing
Administration.
Not just administration alone, just
Management.
like changing in the people who
Management.
at the top, right, who are dealing with the administration, not even changing like administration, like political administration, like just the departments. They fall off because, they had no succession. Yeah? And what I've realized since I've been in the industry is that because there are too few people either on one end, which is the administration, and too few in the primary production end, and not much in between, in the form of companies tending to the different needs of that particular sector. It tends to fall apart because it didn't have the middle involved.
So that middle you are making reference to is the business class,
Yes,
basically.
basically. So instead of taking the approach where you have THA and the bigger players, which are the big processors and the cocoa rehabilitation companies and the cocoa association, and then you have farmers trying to produce. Do some serious, not just training, but education, right? So apart from just assessing the opportunity cost, but do some education, or at least have people working with different people within the sector to form companies. So like for instance, you will need access roads. So have people develop companies even if it's just pave the roads, do the drains, companies. If you need fencing, there's a whole company, land management, a whole company. Even the ecology, right? So soil management and so forth, because cocoa are tree plant. And you will have, now that you're developing, you'll have people going inside there spraying this antifungal, copper antifungal, that pest control, that, and you will kill the soil. And cocoa is a tree plant, and all trees are connected to a fungal network. And if you kill out the network, the quality of the cocoa will fall off. Yes, you'll get beans, you'll get beans, you'll get pod, but the quality, the chemical makeup of the cocoa, it will fall off. So you need to form companies between the primary producer and the end user and develop the entire sector, not just on the two ends.
All right, so let me just contribute to that and perhaps try to answer some of what you have mentioned. Now, in relation to the middle men, or perhaps the business class, as the case may be in your context, now, nothing is preventing any one of us from forming a company. All right? So you, in your own right, could form a company to do the same thing that you just mentioned. Nothing is preventing you from doing it as a citizen of the country. So that's number one. Number two, in relation to merging all that you have mentioned. So even if on one end of the spectrum, there's a change in management, on the other end of the spectrum, there's a change in management, and in the middle, you want that middle to be the buffer to continue the production based on what was initiated. That is what you are saying, right? Basically. So even though there's a change in management, the objectives or the production should continue and it shouldn't start over or fall apart. Now, what I'm saying is that if you understand Tobago as a whole, there is a shortfall in the business sector. And if you understand 70% of the working class, they are employed by whom? The THA.
And that is the part that I'm talking about.
And that I know that is the part they're talking about. While 30%, you know, they're doing their own private thing, you know what I mean, going on. But at the end of the day, we need to understand the reality of it. But the THA in itself cannot actually create businesses for individuals. The most we could do is support it. The government could support the initiatives. And that is why there are so many grants available. And I only made mention of one grant available. But there are many other grants, and there are even loan facilities through the THA and through the central government, through NITCO, through ADB, and through other agencies, financial agencies that could support that same initiative that you mentioned in relation to trying to build the business class on the island. So it's not that it is far-fetched, it is possible, but the most the government would do is encourage, to assist, and to ensure that the facilities are available. So I'm not too sure if you know that there's venture capital available, for which you can get up to, I think it's $5 million through finance. Before that, there's also the business development unit, for which you could get a grant to create that same company that you are talking about. That is available. That is a grant facility for which you don't have to pay back. All right? It is free. And at that level, you are also being trained and being educated as well. But on that level, you are being trained and educated more on a management level and a financial level, knowing how to manage the operations of the business and to also manage your finances. But it wouldn't show you how to...
That is under BDU?
That is under BDU as well. But it wouldn't show you how to apply your trade, if you understand me. That is a different training for which we would do at this level. Training and education, as you mentioned. So it is not for the government to do, because if we do it, you would end up with you end up with more TACO and more other state enterprises for which we don't intend to do, but we intend to empower people like yourself.
So I want to add to the conversation in that this whole idea of revitalizing the cocoa sector is really to ensure that cocoa enthusiasts do not feel the burden of doing it alone. So yes, there are opportunities out there that if you wish to go and get your grant funding and do your thing, you can do that. But what the THA wants to do is to engage that third-party initiative that you now can have an ease of going through that third party to build your estate and to build your product, right? So it eliminates all of the hassle of a farmer going through that process of getting their own grant funding. And Therefore, we start having conversations with the, what's the name of the Cocoa Development Company, and also the other company that was mentioned on the side, the Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa Association, right? Once we are locked in this regard, then these companies can then build out all of the training and provide all of the materials that are necessary for you, the farmers, to use, right? And therefore provide a platform for you to grow your business. So it eliminates all of that need for you to go and seek your own grant funding. As it relates to that production level, clearly we know that Tobago has one of the best cocoa within the world. We know that for sure. And we know for sure that the industry is not operating at optimal level. And therefore, we have to build the sector. We have to revitalize the sector. And by engaging with other agencies, right, it will help us to move from one level to the next, right? And to put an actual figure on the amount of tonnage that we are looking to move at a particular point in time, that will be worked out. Obviously, it will grow, right? It will grow from how much ton with 50,000 tons to 100,000 tons and grow over time and over time. So there is no specific amount to say that we are aiming for that target, let's say in 3 months or 4 months, right? But we want to revive the sector. The sector is an important sector. It is a good sector, right? And we need that third-party initiative to help to grow it.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Trotman, for your contribution. Just permit me, because we are live and there are certain questions being asked on the online platform, and a question was asked by Nikisha Toussaint in relation to the grants being easily accessible. And she also stated that the criteria is a bit lengthy. They are asking for a lot. But what I need to say in relation to accessing grant funding on a whole from the government, there are minimum requirements regardless across the board. All right? And then at the end of the day, we have to be accountable, and we have to try not to engage in any sort of conflict. And when it comes to agriculture and land ownership and tenure, I think that is normally the stumbling block for most persons when I speak to them, right? In relation to getting that document to state that here's what you are given permission to utilize this parcel of land. And even yesterday, a guy, I'm just sharing this based on anecdote, there is a farmer who came in and he wanted to benefit from the incentives, because the incentives is a benefit to farmers as well, farmers, fishermen, and agro-processors, for which similar information is required to benefit from the state. All right? So what happened? The requirement is simple. All you need is the invoice for which, or for the item that you purchased. You need the land document again. Well, obviously the department would already have your farmer's information in terms of your ID. And if it's a case where you are not the owner of the property, and let's say it's a private property, all that is required is an affidavit. That is all that is required to fulfill that particular requirement, which is normally the stumbling block. So it's just a matter of you as the operator or the occupier of that land and the owner of that land coming to one mutual ground or an agreement before a JP or a commissioner of affidavit to state, one, the location of the land, two, the acreage, because obviously the state would want to know how much you occupy or how much you're entitled to. Three, in terms of the production, what type of production, crop, livestock, as the case may be. And then you want that to be solidified in that legal document, which is an affidavit, right? Which would then show proof that this occupier, right, is actually legally occupying the land, although it is not vested in the individual. So that is just one way. In relation to the state, well, you know that you receive certain documents in relation to deed of comfort or other documents from land management in the office of the chief secretary that would be, that they would accept, of course. But that is much easier than when you are occupying another person's land. But every other requirement is simple. And let me get back to the grant funding now. All you need, in most cases, would be 2 forms of ID. You would need the utility bill as usual, just like if you're going to open a bank account, because you can't go to these financial institutions and say, well, I ain't have 2 forms of ID, or I have no ID, but I still want money from all you. If you understand what I'm saying, you need to meet the minimum requirements. So besides those 2 forms of ID, your utility bill, obviously you would need a proposal or a business plan, because you can't want money from these institutions, especially the grant funding in particular, and you cannot show what you're going to do with the money. All right, so they want to ensure that whatever they are giving you the money to do is what you would do, and the only way to validate that is through what you propose through a business plan or the proposal, the business proposal, and then any other supporting documents that you see fit, whether it be drawings of what you want to do, if it's a hydroponics, but I'm just stating in general, aside from the cocoa industry, or if you want to go into agro-processing for the cocoa, you need to get your invoices from whoever would be the supplier of the equipment. And I think in most cases, if not all, you need to ensure that the supplier is within the country, within Trinidad and Tobago, to provide what you are requesting. All right, so it is not that technical. It is just that some farmers may need the assistance in relation to the signing up of the document and perhaps the drafting of their proposals and business plan. And it's a similar approach to when farmers are approaching these owners of these private estates. All right, you need to go into a legal agreement for a specific period of time, also identify the acreage that you would be managing to avoid any sort of conflict or any unforeseen repercussion in the future. All right? Do we have any other question pertaining to today's presentation, or any other concerns, queries? All right, so basically that brings us to the end of our second cocoa stakeholder consultation. I want to thank all of you, our stakeholders, also our viewing and listening public. I want to also thank our hardworking committee members, and I would also like to thank the Secretary, Mrs. Natasha Charles Pantin, all right, for listening to the stakeholders' concerns. And I know that she's trying her best within the agriculture industry, not only for agriculture itself, but for the fishermen within the marine industry, also for the agro-processors, also persons within the environment, as we know that we are battling climate change. Now we have the oil spill, all right, that is tampering with our mangroves. Also forestry, we cannot forget forestry. All right, so as we close today's consultation, I just want to wish everyone the best, and I hope that we really develop this cocoa industry the way it used to be, and even surpass that, and look at the value added commodity, or the value added aspect of the industry to boost our economy. All right, so safe journey, and we would see you again.